who had played a lot of control throughout the weeks of the Hearthstone Premiership, has brought aggro lineup on the last week, and now he's banned Mage, left Druid open in what looks like a control lineup from Duncan. Is this indicating we're going to see a more aggro lineup from Mysterious?
Yeah, in general, I think you want to ban Druid whenever you can. And you're right, here comes Mysterious with Vicious Fledgling, which means he's got the most aggressive variant of Druid you can possibly play. Yeah,
so he is looking for those big early boards, buff them up, try and win early on here against the Jade Druid of Duncan, as you can see already. Matchup that Mysterious should have the advantage in, although he does draw patches on the mulligan, so won't get the value of the Bloodseeker Corsair straight away. And actually, Duncan's got some great early aggro defense tools in his hand already.
Yeah, this is a really close matchup. I do favor the Jade Druid slightly, but they do have to get that Primordial Drake, because the main threat here from Mysterious is living mana. That can come down anytime after turn 5, turns all your mana crystals into 2/2s, and if the opponent has already used up too much removal, those things will just kill you.
So he gets the Jade Idol on 1, that will give him the 1/1 Jade. Follow-up play, would love to have had Wild Growth in hand, but does not yet. Obviously he's got a couple of options going forward. And now Mysterious has got a tough turn. Obviously, with patches in hand, that always feels bad, but has the Mark of Visage Enchanted Raven combo if he really wanted to pull that out as well.
Yeah, I think he wants to save that until he can do that for sure. It does mean he has a very, very weak first turn, and Duncan's now in a great situation. If you can remove 2 or 3 of things at the start, it protects that Primordial Drake for later, and then you can use that on the living mana, and then you stabilize, gain 1,000,000 armor, and the game is yours. So he's got lots of options with this Innovate now.
Sure, I mean, right now it's turn 2. Option between Wrath and Hero Power. Wrath seems a little bit overkill for this 1/2 on board, so might be that Duncan chooses to Hero Power and trade here.
Yeah, and he's got to try and work out what he's up against. Mysterious chose, with patches in hand, to save his coin for something. So that coin is going to be held back, and Duncan's got to work out what it's for.
Coin is in great use for something like Mark of the Lotus, which you can already see in Mysterious's hand. Sometimes it's good to use that mana, get a board that is big, and then buff it up with Mark of the Lotus very quickly. And you can already see Mysterious is starting to build a board, or he's got a hand that could build a board very quickly here, and that will synergize nicely with Mark of the Lotus. Remember, Druids in general are bad at dealing with boards that go wide. Right. They don't have the tools to do that. So if you can get a wide board early, as the aggro Druid, you can put a lot of pressure on this Jade Druid before the taunts come down, before the Primordial Drakes come down as well.
So the natural looking play here would be to play the Enchanted Raven and put the Mark of Visage on it. However, the reason he won't do that is not necessarily the swipe. He's not scared of Innovate Swipe. That's 2 cards, that's fine. He would be scared of Feral Rage, just taking it out in 1 hit. Yeah. And instead, like you said, he's going to go wide and defend himself.
And Duncan's now got to make a choice. Does he innovate out the swipe because he's scared of what could happen to this board? Or does he play it a bit safer with Wrath, or even look for a Nourish play? There is a lot of options here for Duncan. Would you be scared of this board right now? If you were in Duncan's position, would you say, I actually almost feel like I need to waste 1 mana to swipe something off the way?
Yeah, I'd be scared. I mean, what he wants to do is he wants to Hero Power, just hit the Firefly for 1, and then next turn swipe, Innovate, and Hero Power the other half down, just kill everything. But he knows if he goes down that route and Mark of the Lotus is played, he loses the game a lot of the time. So he's holding that Wrath, and I think that's probably what we'll see. The turn after the Wrath, he can look to Jade Spirit, and then Jade Spirit with a swipe behind it really is good at just tidying up the board.
He's going to lock down this Mark of Visage, make sure it doesn't get value in terms of card draw on this Raven, but it does leave these 1/2s on board, so Mysterious can use that option to go wide. And Mysterious's hand's not looking fantastic. You know, if you end up playing patches here, Mark of the Lotus, you still only got a board full of essentially 2 attack minions. It's not a huge deal for Duncan to have to deal with, especially it's not put a lot of pressure on, especially over the first 3 turns. So that was a good move by Duncan. Plays it a little bit safer, but really takes out the major threat with that previous turn. And
what we're seeing now is that Innovate coming to hand. And we saw for a while some players only playing 1 Innovate in this deck. For this reason, if you're trying to keep the gas going, and you're trying to wipe out your opponent quickly, and if you draw that second Innovate, it's so slow. But the problem with that is your best play in the whole of Hearthstone right now is turn 1, Innovate, Vicious Fledgling. Yeah. So most people have gone back to playing 2, but this is the punish when you do that.
And this is something that the aggro Druid does struggle with. You can burn through cards very quickly, especially across the early turns, and then you are lacking in terms of card draw, especially if you don't get value out of that Mark of Visage. Duncan, looking at a board of 6 power, probably doesn't feel hugely threatened at this point in time. He's got options available. Like he said, you know, he's already played 1 Jade Idol already. He's going to generate a 4 power board just off the back here, and suddenly he's contesting against the aggro Druid early on.
Yeah, and he's got that Nourish in hand, which should help him get into the Primordial Drake that he will be desperate to get. From where he's sat right now, the way he loses this is to struggle to clear this board, which we can see he's not going to struggle, and then run out of stuff to kill the living mana. And we can see at the moment he has no way at all of dealing with living mana.
Yeah.
And so he will be just, at the back of his mind, trying to find that Primordial Drake as quickly as possible. Some people even play the Curator now, so that it can help them find that Drake even more quickly.
Yeah, obviously Curator guarantees you a draw of a Primordial Drake if it's the only dragon in your deck. Tarkri comes down for Mysterious. Obviously gives him a bit of anti-aggro, but also you can buff it up. So you can buff it up on your turn so it's not quite so useless as just a 1/5. Will protect his board. Now the choice is, does he make any value trades here? Because if he does, you do kind of play into swipe ever so slightly. Obviously getting 1 mana on 1 health of minions. He's actually going to use the Mark of his Charge to buff up, and what that does allow him to either make a trade or just go face.
Yeah, and anyone who tells you it's easy to play aggro decks is telling you wrong. Every single turn, Mysterious is having to make this decision. Do I have enough stuff to win this game if I trade right now? And can I afford not to trade right now? If I leave up these minions, they're just going to wipe out mine. So he's trying to conserve damage, but also get as much damage to face as he possibly can.
I like that play by Mysterious because it has made it very difficult for Duncan to approach this board state now. Because of the Tar Creeper has kind of changed how you think about trading in this current meta of Ungoro. It's one of those cards that interacts on your opponent's turn. Swipe suddenly doesn't feel so good because you can't get that 4/5 down easily unless you use your Innovate somehow as well.
Yeah, and again, he wants to save that Innovate for a potential living mana top deck. He knows exactly what he's up against now.
Yeah.
The only card that can stop him, well, the only 2 cards are Bittertide Hydra and living mana that he's even worried about now.
I would be potentially worried about Savage Roar coming out sometime soon, though, because obviously you've got this big board and you need to somehow get this off. He's actually going to take this trade, and what this is doing is just clearing up the Tar Creeper, so you are just reducing the board a little bit. Obviously, Tar Creeper is a great feral, Savage Roar target, because obviously it gets some sort of power in. And also clear up another, takes a value trade so that Duncan's can at least at some point guarantee that this 2/1 will trade somewhere.
And Power of the Wild is actually a decent pickup for Mysterious. He can read into Duncan's last play and have a good chance of realizing that Swipe is in Duncan's hand. And so he can use his Power of the Wild to buff those minions out of range and perhaps keep something coming. Duncan is down to only 16. As far as Mysterious is aware, there's no armor gain in hand. And so Mysterious can just buff these out and try to limp over the finishing line.
And this is something that you do find with aggro druids. Sometimes you do become very top deck reliant. Sometimes it does become, I need exactly 1 or 2 cards off the top of my deck to help me win this game, help me finish and get over the line. One thing that Mysterious does play into his favor, that there hasn't been a huge amount of Jade generation yet, so you're not going to get a massive board on 6 with Aya. So I think there's at that point playing into his favor.
Yeah, Duncan can draw the Auctioneer. That would give him a decent turn as well. But you're right, I mean, because the Jades are small, that means that your health gain is going to be low. And Mysterious has found a way here to keep the pressure coming and make sure that this 5/6 is really difficult to deal with.
So Duncan, I don't even think can swipe and hero power trade here without innovating out a Feral Rage for armor as well, because he's just dead if he does.
Right.
So actually this is a really good awkward position for Duncan to be in. He might want to Nourish to find options, but what options are you looking for right now? That you have to deal with this board in some way, shape or form. The swipe, hero power, Feral Rage play might be the best way to survive right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that punish that, but most of the... So Savage Roar would only do an additional 6, plus the one from the hero power is 7. So Duncan could survive a Savage Roar if he Nourished now and then just Feral Rage straight after.
You could actually obviously just swipe the 3/2 off and try and expect later on to not have to deal with the 5/6, obviously without having to make that hero power trade. So you could swipe the 3/2. But again, these are all losing plays, realistically. There's nothing that's going to sort of win you the game outright. The Primordial Drake is there for the next turn, you'd imagine. But the Feral Rage is going to buy him some time, and that is the time he might need to get that Primordial Drake out. Yeah,
and he also has this double swipe option coming up later as well. So if he can survive just one more turn, he should be in a good spot. It's a big if. Mysterious has a lot of good outs, and there's another Mark of the Lotus, which means that these things are going to be even harder to deal with and give even less time as well. And Duncan might just fall a turn short here.
He might just do a turn short. He needs an Innovate realistically. How many has he used already? Has he used just 1 Innovate so far? I believe so. So 1 Innovate so far, which means he can't get any of these 8 drops out. And actually, I think this could be it. Could be all she wrote right now for Duncan. Didn't quite have the answers available. Mysterious put that board wide. It is very difficult for Druids to deal with, even up to 4 minions on board. They do need swipes, and they need to be swipes that are valuable across that board as well. And Duncan never really found that opportunity because of the way the Mysterious buffed his minions in the early game.
Yeah, trying to work out if Auctioneer into Innovate actually is good enough. I don't think it is, because he only gains 5 armor that way. If he goes or Innovate followed by the scales.
The scales, yeah, there's nothing
just
they could do.
Doesn't get there. And Mysterious, who looked like he had too slow a start there for a while, Duncan managed to not use that swipe because Mysterious kept his minions out of range, and yeah, reading the situation well and taking a 1-0 lead.
That's the funny thing about aggro Druid. You commit within the first 3 or 4 turns to essentially your end game plan.
Right.
Your first 3 or 4 turns, and obviously living mana bails you out like a couple of times, but within the first 3 or 4 times you're like, this is my game now, so this is what I commit to the board with, and then I just use my buffs as and when I get them. I look for Savage Roar as a lethal out. That was a good play by Mysterious to commit very hard in the early game, buff up, and then try and make it as difficult as possible for Swipe to deal with the board. And he did that incredibly well. Obviously used that Mark of Charge on the Firefly, made it difficult, made it all behind the Tar Creeper. That's what Tar Creeper is designed to do realistically, kind of protects some of your more important minions. Mysterious, I think, played that really well, and obviously Duncan didn't quite have the answers in hand.
Yeah, and Mysterious dodged the trap there of putting the Mark of Charge on the Raven, which could easily lead to just having one big minion, which actually it's not big enough. Druid can deal with it, and then now you're playing from behind the whole game. Mysterious played that very well, and looks like we're going to get everyone's favourite cards in this game, just Paladin 1-drops.
Paladin 1-drops, but it does feel like with Grimscale Chum, you're looking at a little bit more of an aggressive variant here for Mysterious. He's got the Bluegill Warrior in as well. This plays into that aggro lineup that we talked about.
Yeah, and I'll tell you who'll be licking their lips right now, and that's Ben. He'll be cheering for Mysterious watching this lineup, because his lineup is built to try and take this lineup on.
Absolutely. Mysterious will look at Green Sheep's lineup, however, and say,
yeah, I fancy some of that.
I fancy some of that. This is a bit of a swing and roundabout right now. Mysterious, if he wins this, will have a very tough next game against Ben. But if he wins that, he should go into the finals feeling fairly confident. Duncan, however, not out of it, just 1-0 down. We know how good Duncan is. He can turn these series around. He has done it before. And he's got a pretty good start himself.
Yeah, he needs to see how greedy to be here. The Vilefin Inquisitor's really good a lot of the time here. It just depends what gets buffed up in the other player's hand.
Yeah.
As you can see, as it happens, with the Rockpool Hunter and the buff Bluegill, Duncan has got a very difficult play, even if you can see the hands here.
So Duncan is thinking about it. Looks like it's... He could potentially coin double 1-drop this turn, which is maybe what he's thinking about with this Murloc Tidecooler.
Yeah, that's the play that makes sense, but it might put him in a bit of trouble if he actually goes for it. See how he decides to plan. This is very, very difficult, especially when you know what your opponent's up against, you know, what his hand could have in it. You don't know what it has got in it. So you've got to remember things like how many cards they mulligan, etc., to try and make the best decision you can.
And obviously Paladins aren't too stressed about their turn 2 because they always have that ability to just use a hero power if necessary, especially in this mid-range version that looks like Duncan is running, or the control version. We'll always have that backup. Mysterious has got so many options here. The 3-2 charge will deal with the Vilefin, and obviously the 2-1 trade into the 2-2 would be the prime option for Mysterious. That looks like he's what he's going to go for. But he did have the option of the Rockpool and the Hydrologist. But as this deck, you want to maintain control of the early game. You want to continue to put pressure down. You don't want to give that control mid-range Paladin any space on board to negotiate.
And look at this now from Mysterious. He's going to be able to get the board under control as well as make the board pretty wide by making sure that Duncan has no minions. He's making sure that Duncan's War Leader is not actually going to have anything to buff. Same with the Megasaur. If there's no minions there, it's still decent. A fine 4-for-4. And Mysterious now just playing it by textbook, just keeping the board clear. And soon he's going to be able to start hitting the face.
Yeah, Hydrologist or War Leader here. Hydrologist with a secret could be good. You could have the Noble Sacrifice, which should soak up something, although Mysterious would likely, obviously, know to play around that.
Well, yeah, but how do you play around it? Because you'll be scared of Consecration.
Yeah.
So if you attack with a 2-3, which looks like the obvious play to play around Noble Sacrifice, actually you're just saying consecrate my whole board next turn.
Yeah, but
so
can you
have to make
with your board state, can you afford to play around Consecrate right now? I mean, two of your major minions are going to die to Consecrate regardless.
Yeah, there's a big difference though between. I mean, you can play around it by running in your 2-1, then they can't concentrate. Yeah, if they want to consecrate one minion, good luck to them.
Yeah, it doesn't seem so good to consecrate that board, right?
I guess you can play around it a little tiny bit here as well by playing the Stonehill Defender. Be interesting to see what he goes with, because there's other options. That doesn't have to be Noble Sacrifice. It could also be a Getaway Coda. You're giving the control deck even more stuff to control you with.
He looks like he's going to try and make the play where he plays around Consecrate a little better,
right?
Here, which obviously gets rid of some of his board, but means it's less enticing for Duncan to have to use a Consecrate on just a singular minion or something along those lines.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what Mysterious decides to do with the minions in hand now, because if he makes the trade with the Rockpool Hunter, then all of his minions will be in Consecration range. But if he plays the Stonehill Defender, which could also help fix his curve, he might get a decent 6-drop or 5-drop to put down on turn 5 or 6. It does actually waste mana on this turn.
Stonehill Defender will give him some more value in hand as well. He's kind of running short of cards again, unless he runs Divine Favor. I'm not sure if he does. Redemption, Repentance. I mean, I don't mind a lot of those, really. Even Getaway Coda is great because it will obviously trade into something, and a lot of these minions have an immediate impact. All three out of 4 of these minions have an immediate impact if you play them on turn. So,
yeah, I think getting that Getaway Coda meant he was able to go a little bit wider than I was talking about, because he will at least get the cards back. Regarding Divine Favor, there's about a 50-50 chance he plays a 1.
Yeah. People
do like to play 1 Divine Favor, but some people think it's just too clunky in the early game to take it out.
It can be really clunky, especially with how good 3-drops are right now as well for, you know, obviously if you want to play on 3, but Paladin doesn't really have too many ways to refill their hands, so, you know, again, this is Mysterious playing the game of, I'm relying particularly on top decks to kind of bring me through here. That's the best target that Duncan could have hoped for to get bounced back for Mysterious. It's the only one that doesn't have an immediate impact when you play it, but there is a 5-drop for Mysterious.
Yeah, Finger the Flying Star, and that is it's not even the focal point of this new Murloc deck, but it's still the card advantage. You're saying it runs low on cards, but everything in the deck, the Getaway Coda that comes from the Secret, the Stonehill Defender, the Finger, they're all about keeping the pressure on. The Druid runs out of stuff. This doesn't run out of stuff anywhere near as quickly. And
Duncan is staring down a very scary board state right now, and he doesn't really have too many options to play. He might even be better off almost playing nothing at all because of how scary Finger could be if it drew something like a War Leader off the back of it.
Yeah, the problem is that he's just because he's got no board, he's got no synergy with his cards. They're just really mediocre when they're on their own, these guys. And if he doesn't play something down soon, he's just going to die to the stuff that's there already.
The best option feels like it might be Gentle Megasaur. Because if then you trade Finger in to get things out, then Finger might die if you don't draw a War Leader, for instance. I think even if you do draw a War Leader, Finger dies regardless, right? So
the other option is to maybe just play the War Leader and make a hero power. At least then there's some chance that your Spike Ridge Steed has something to go on to next turn, although the chances are that Mysterious will just clear up and keep doing what he's doing.
But then you feel like, if you trade into the 4-1 and just play a Gentle, you make it a little bit more difficult for Mysterious to make a trade.
Right. I think that's what's going to happen.
This is a really tough turn for Duncan, though.
Yeah, he's going to lose half of his health next turn if there is an attack. Yeah, and he does decide that he needs to get that Spike Ridge Steed down. He feels that the Megasaur might just get ignored by the opposing minions. They might just hit him in the face for 7 more, make another minion.
Blessing of Kings is a big draw. That is a big draw indeed. How close is Mysterious right now?
He's 4 away if he puts a Blessing on something and just all goes face. We're not going to see that. We're going to see Finger go and fetch some more friends.
Yeah, I mean, if you go all face at this point and then Duncan actually clears, you kind of killed your win condition.
Trying to work out what could happen if you attack with a Finger. You might get double War Leader, and then you'll win the game if you keep back your Blessing, if your Finger goes into the 3-2 here. But more likely, he's going to Blessing up the Finger. No, he's going to actually go with the Tycaller first, which means he's going to get buffed up by these guys.
Oh, that's a charge.
He's kept the Blessing back, so any damage here.
Oh, that is huge.
Enough. I believe there's 7 on the board. That buffs them by 6. He's got 4 in his hand, and that's going to give him a 2-0 lead.
That was an awesome play coming from Mysterious there. And again, Duncan had the choice between to play into it, but I think regardless, he would have drawn those from the Finger, even if the Gentle Megasaur came down. But I'm wondering whether a Gentle Megasaur might have bought Duncan another turn if he just played that instead of giving an easy option to the Finger there, because it would have required 2 trades for Finger to get the Murlocs out.
That way around, what he would have done, there would have been the Blessing of Kings would go on the Finger.
Yeah, the Finger. And then
the Finger then takes down the Megasaur, and then the stuff comes into play. You'd have had.
I
think he might have only been able to get him down to 2. Or
yeah,
something,
it would have been very
would
close.
have been absurd.
I mean, this is all speculation based around the fact that I think Duncan was probably out of it anyway. I mean, Duncan then had the follow-up with Spike Reach Steed with nothing to play on it. He did have Sunkeeper Towering, but that probably just helped Mysterious,
exactly,
to be honest.
right.
So I think Mysterious had put himself in a winning position in that game regardless. And again, this aggro lineup proving a real Achilles heel for Duncan, who has been a steadfast presence in the ESL Premiership, you know, consistently able to perform. Really good in the control versus the control mirrors, but Mysterious bringing this aggro lineup, and it seems really difficult for Duncan to get his grips, especially in the first few turns of the game. Yeah,
in fairness, that Paladin match is really favoured, especially if you're going first for Mysterious. He did get to go first, so Duncan never managed to get any traction there. He tried hard on turn 1 to change it around by coining out both minions, which gave him the maximum chance of sticking something, but because the Chum had buffed the bluegill, that meant that Mysterious was able to clear up, and if you let those Murlocs stick, and Duncan had no choice but to, it's just all over.
Well, Mysterious knows that he can send patches back into his deck this time round, because he's at least got it on the mulligan. And if you were to wager Pirate Warrior across 3 games getting at least 1 win against a control matchup, you'd say that there is a good chance that he could find a win here.
Yeah, very much so. I do favour the Druid over Pirates. A lot of people don't, but I feel that... I think people have worked out you don't have to get a massive armour gain on your Earthen Scales. If you stick it on just a 3-3 or a 4-4, generates a good minion that sticks and gains you enough armour.
Spellbreaker in Mysterious's Pirate Warrior deck here. Another way to get through those pesky taunts. Right. So Migo face.
Yeah.
That's interesting inclusion to me.
It's been sneaking into the meta slowly but surely. Some people at HCT last week even ran 2 of them.
Wow.
But it's all about what lineup you think destroys you, and obviously Mysterious feels that he might need the Spellbreaker to just get through against one of these decks.
The Mysterious completes his aggro triumph with the patches on 1. That's the best feeling.
The best feeling. Unless you're playing Rogue, where you actually don't want it until you've completed your quest, I guess. But yeah, here come the guys, but there's no weapon. It doesn't really matter though. Still get that aggro, that power onto the board, ready to start hitting face. The fact they've had to wait a turn, okay.
And now this makes this turn for Duncan feel slightly saltier by playing Wild Growth on 2, knowing that you're going to receive 4 damage to face next turn, and whatever else Mysterious can bring to the table on his own turn 2. But it certainly looks like Mysterious is ready and loaded.
Yeah, and this is going to work out really badly for Duncan. One of the ways you can sometimes stabilize here is by getting Aya down and just sort of doing enough. Well, he's going to get the Jade Blossom down next turn, then the Aya the turn after, and she's going to get Spellbreaker.
Oh, that's a good card for Duncan to have picked up, though. It will give him a little bit of a lifeline going into the later turns of this game.
Right. The Feral Rage can remove a minion. Usually it means what you say, it's a lifeline. If you've managed to stabilize anyway and clear up all your opponent's board, you can play the Feral Rage and then you just get that little extra bit of health needed. Interesting
turn for Mysterious here. He could get mana efficiency by using Heroic Strike and Dread Corsair and then hit face with his Fiery War Axe. But then it does mean he trades one of his minions away, which over the course of a few turns could out-damage that Heroic Strike. But he is then weak to swipe if he leaves these minions up regardless, and he might not have got the value out of it. So this is a really interesting turn for Mysterious to make the choice on.
Yeah, same sort of decision that we saw in the aggro Druid, and he is actually just going to keep leaving that repeated damage on the board.
He could just go face with everything.
Yeah, I mean, it depends when he feels like this Arcanite Reaper might come in handy. He probably next turn won't have a weapon, so he might feel that he can wait 1 more turn. He might be scared of Gluttonous Ooze.
Yeah.
So that's a reason to attack.
He's holding on to it. Fine. Yeah. And this is going to be a huge Spellbreaker for Mysterious, by the way, onto Aya. Makes an easy trade for him if he does want to use the War Axe to do so.
This is your Bane weapon as a Druid against the Pirate Warrior, your Aya. And Mysterious should just be fine here to push in more chunks of damage to face.
He's actually going to avoid the Spellbreaker here. It means he might go for a Heroic Strike play, potentially. I mean, if there's no taunt coming through, is he just saying that I've got Arcanite Reaper next turn, I can use the Spellbreaker later to get them through the taunt? I'm just going to go face with everything.
Yeah, he seems to feel that even a taunt would just be got through here if everything goes to face. That's indeed what he's going to do. And this is going to put Duncan down to 5. Which is the Arcanite Reaper, which means that Duncan needs a taunt before he even starts here, or to armor up.
Well,
there is the Jade Behemoth.
But is this maybe even a Fandral Feral Rage turn as well. You've got that to consider.
So if you Fandral Feral Rage, you go to 13. You then end up using some of that 13 to kill a minion. It might be, but it does, because Jade Behemoth plus Hero Power does get you 1 extra armor in the long run.
You can't Hero Power the Jade Behemoth.
That's what I mean, but next turn you can. So if you do the Fandral this turn, that buys you, that buys you the turn to go into the Jade Behemoth turn next turn. He's going to do this.
The rage of the Firelands.
Suddenly Mysterious might be facing down an area where he's punished for raids.
Right.
He could have used that Spellbreaker to try and clean up the board a little bit, make it so that the Duncan had to have an answer that wasn't already on board. That was a really interesting turn for me, because I think Mysterious was playing to the outs of he's only worried about a taunt coming through, but Feral Rage has made it so that it's going to require 2 turns and a little bit extra to get through Duncan here.
Yeah, he's never ever going to have the board again. So how this is going to work out is he's going to be a little tiny bit short in that he's going to go face, Duncan's going to play the taunt, and then Mysterious will be able to Spellbreaker it, but because the way Duncan played the previous turn, he's going to have that 1 extra point of armor.
This is yeah, so he needs one damage.
His deck is certainly capable of doing 1 damage, but he needs it within the next 2 turns as well.
2 mana, 1 damage. Heroic Strike might be the only thing, right?
Duncan set up lethal here.
Upgrade!
He gets the upgrade,
yeah, of course,
and
upgrade.
that is Mysterious. He just thanked somebody, and he is going to take this down 3 games to 0, and he will end up playing Ben in what is effectively the semi-final.
And Mysterious in a clean sweep, almost quicker than 1 game of our previous series.
Wow.
Mysterious has just swept Duncan away with this aggro lineup that he brought. And this was a similar lineup that he brought to the last week of the ESL Premiership. And it's very against what we have known Mysterious for. Mysterious has been a big fan of control decks in the past, but I mean, he has changed it up and it has worked endlessly for him here. But he's got a big test next against Ben.
Yeah, he really has. Ben has brought a lineup that he was expecting to play against Green Sheep's aggro lineup.